Good evening and welcome to the Genesis Science Report. I'm David Rives, and coming up on tonight's show is a breakthrough in gravitational theory, finally in reach. A nuclear engineer trained at MIT, Dr. Mike Houts, brings insight on a new quantum model that could rewrite our understanding of the universe and reveal the fingerprints of God's design. Later, Dr. Clarey takes a closer look at the claim that gold is leaking from Earth's core and whether biblical geology offers a much more grounded explanation to this. But first, cracks have been appearing in the theory of evolution, well, ever since its inception. So here, at the centennial of the Scopes trial, I say, let's reopen the box and debate. Because new cracks are appearing in the theory, and even the most ardent supporters of atheistic worldviews show the progress that is made. Take, for example, what Richard Dawkins, the leader of the New Atheists, said recently in a debate regarding Christianity. He was debating with recent converts.
The idea that the universe was actually created by a supernatural intelligence is a dramatic, important idea. If it were true, it would completely change everything we know. We'd be living in a totally different universe. Now that's a big thing. I'm sorry, but it's bigger than personal comfort and nice stories and things. The idea that the universe has lurking beneath it an intelligence, a supernatural intelligence that invented the laws of physics, that invented mathematics. And that is a stupendous idea, if it's true.
And it is so true that it is a stupendous idea that reshapes the way that science should be done. So how did the bitter and dangerous ideas of universal common descent become so widespread? Well, it has been 100 years since the destructive lie and the antiquated colonial religious ideology of Darwinian evolution invaded the thoughts and minds of our schools and academic institutions. And in a somewhat pompous fashion, there are colleges right here in my home state of Tennessee that are flaunting the anniversary. With much pomp and circumstance, Vanderbilt University, for instance, has events for the Scopes Monkey Trial Centennial Festival scheduled throughout the year. Now, this is actually very much in character because the original trial was similarly set up as a show trial. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And when I criticize an institution, it doesn't mean that I don't respect many of the great minds who work there. But what really happened 100 years ago? Well, we have so much disinformation that it's kind of hard to weed through exactly what happened with clarity. But tonight we're taking a minute to ask, what are the actual facts and what is the legacy of the Scopes Monkey Trial? Well, let's lay it out. 100 years ago, in the sweltering summer of 1925, a courtroom in Dayton, Tennessee became the stage for a battle that would echo through the ages. So Dayton is a tiny town in Mideast Tennessee, hardly a blip on the map. And believe it or not, Dayton's civic leaders saw it as an opportunity to boost the town's economy and to put it on the map. And it did draw attention. The trial drew thousands of visitors, reporters, even vendors selling food and souvenirs. It was also one of the first major court cases to be broadcast live on radio, making this all of a sudden a national sensation. So the trial itself was elaborately orchestrated by none other than our friends over at the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, to challenge the Butler Act. So the Butler Act actually banned teaching evolution in public schools. This is in 1925. The ACLU advertised they wanted a teacher willing to be arrested, and John Scopes, a young substitute teacher and a football coach, he volunteered to be the guinea pig. So the Scopes trial was ultimately a high-stakes clash of ideas, but much worse than that, it became this Pandora's box that was flung open all of a sudden, unleashing a storm of lies, charading as science and philosophy. But instead of being like the beginning of a marketplace of free ideas, as it's been sold, it actually led to a draconian monopoly on science. A century later, and I see the Scopes trial not as a victory for progress, but as a tragedy for open inquiry. You see, John Scopes, a young teacher, he was fined for teaching evolution. But the real crime was the narrative that followed. The trial was not about science triumphing over faith, it was about power. The elites, those self-appointed guardians of truth, crafted a story that painted people with Judeo-Christian values, like likely you watching right now, as backward, as ignorant, as unworthy of a seat at the scientific table. They shut down debate. They ridiculed those who dared question Darwin's dogma and claimed the mantle of reason for themselves. But you know, reason demands open questions and dialogue, not intellectual conformity. The Scopes trial, it opened a box and outpoured a flood of assumptions that drowned out the evidence for a designer. Back then, we lacked some of the scientific data to articulate what we now know from the research of creation scientists and intelligent design proponents. Today, the science of intelligent design stands tall, pointing to the irreducible complexity of life, the cell's machinery, the DNA code, the fine-tuning of the universe itself. I mean, these are not accidents. The odds of random chance creating such precision are beyond astronomical. They are frankly absurd. Yet the intelligentsia, clinging to their outdated ideas, refuses to engage. They dismiss real science as if they were speaking to a small-town school board in 1925. They shut your voice down, not with arguments, but with silence. This trial, it was a gag on free speech, a warning to anyone who dared challenge the prevailing orthodoxy. For William Jennings Bryan, defending the right to teach creation was not just arguing for blind faith, but for the freedom to explore all ideas. He saw what was at stake. No idiot, Bryan was actually a 3-time presidential candidate and former Secretary of State. He was a populist who worried that Darwinism would likely be used to justify social Darwinism and eugenics, which was all the rage for the scientific community at that time. But he opposed that. His stance was as much about social concerns as religious ones. Bryan was able to see down the line to 2025, beyond Darwinism itself, to the social consequences of this dangerous theory. In fact, the textbook Scopes was accused of using, A Civic Biology by George William Hunter, contained controversial eugenics ideas. Though it's a century on, we, like William Jennings Bryan, won't be silenced. Every day, the evidence for a purpose-based design, it grows stronger using real science. The entire universe screams intentionality, from the constants that govern physics to the information encoded in every living cell in your body. We stand on the shoulders of those who fought in 1925 not to suppress science, but to expand it, to demand a fair hearing of all evidences. So let's have the debate that they feared and they still fear today. Let's follow the evidence as it leads to the truth of God's Word. The truth is, our incredible designer's signature, his fingerprints of design, are written across creation. The evidence is now overwhelming, and it's time for the scientific world to stop pretending, I can't see it. Share this program with every person you know on both sides of the fence, and let's get back to scientific truth instead of biased agendas and antiquated scientific ideas. I'm David Rives, and this is the Genesis Science Report. Just outside Nashville, the Wonder Center and Science Museum, with a top 10 planetarium, kids' hands-on activities, the teen favorite 1 million volt musical Tesla show. It's worlds of fun for the entire family. Experience the wonder. Explore the science. Inspire curiosity. Embark on adventure. The Wonder Center and Science Museum. Today we can just pick up our cell phone and call somebody across the world. Long before this, there were long-distance communications that have happened throughout history.
And you could see dozens of ships coming in that don't belong there. Light up that fire so that that can be seen miles away. If you're going to be defending against attackers, again, it's got to be able to pass the warning in a short amount of time.
On Wonders Without Number. Friends of Genesis Science Network, We started this channel to make an impact in the lives of both Christians and inquiring skeptics around the world. It has done that in unbelievable ways. Now, one of our viewers wrote, "I've been watching your channel for nearly a week now, and I would like you to know the blessing that it's been to me. I've never had the finances or the opportunity to attend a university, but I've been a believer for the last 37 years. Your channel has done more for my understanding of my faith than any book I've read save the Bible, and I feel like I'm finally able to attend the lecture classes I've always wanted to. Thank you so much for your ministry." I want to thank you for your generous support. GSN is no simple project and requires monthly commitments to keep it on the air. Please consider becoming a partner with us today. Just call 931-212-7990 or click Give on our website. We are making a difference. I'm David Rives, and you're watching the Genesis Science Network. Welcome back to the report. This week's Q&A submission comes from Reddit, where Art Guy Deluxe asks, when the Great Flood occurred, where did all of the flood water come from? Where did the water go after the flood? And what evidence can you provide for this explanation? 3 questions. So let's look at those 3 questions. When the Great Flood occurred, where did all of the flood water come from? Well, all of that flood water, according to a biblical definition, according to a biblical explanation, the fountains of the great deep broke open and the windows of heaven were open. So there could have been subterranean water, there could have been a lot of deluge rain that would be coming from clouds above, and then there could be a combination of all of that working together where subterranean water is precipitating massive storms as it's coming out from the fountains of the great deep. Whether that's the mid-Atlantic oceanic ridges or continents breaking apart, great fissures in the ground, we don't know. But this is the biblical definition of where all of the flood water came from. Where did the water go after the flood? Well, the pre-flood continents were likely much flatter than our continents today. And when those continents began to break apart, as they're crashing into each other, they're creating mountain ranges, they're creating ocean basins that are sinking down. So they're creating these much higher areas and much lower areas. Well, of course, the water is going to sink towards these ocean basins. And so the water is actually still here, right here on the earth. It is simply sunk into the ocean basins while our current continental configurations have risen up. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that we look at a globe and we see all of this water covering most of the earth, and we realize that if you just raise those ocean basins by just a little bit, then all of a sudden you would have a world covered with water. That's the evidence for that explanation. I hope that helps, and we love connecting with our viewers, so remember to keep those questions coming. You can always share them with us on social media, or you can email comments at genesissciencenetwork.com. Now, if you are interested in how the events recorded in Genesis shaped the very surface of our planet, you may want to take a closer look at Flood by Design by geologist Mike Ord. This resource explores a fascinating and often overlooked part of the biblical flood account, the months when the waters receded and actually were sculpting the earth into the landscapes that we recognize today. Mainstream geology often relies on these slow, gradual processes to explain surface features, but a lot of those explanations fall short when examined closely. Well, in Flood by Design, Michael Ord presents powerful evidence that supports a global, a catastrophic event, from carving of canyons to the formation of the ocean basins and the mountain ranges. This book, it shows how a worldwide flood followed by massive water runoff events can explain Earth's most dramatic landforms. You're going to actually discover how features like percussion marks and vast sediment layers and unusual rock deposits can all point us back to a real historical event that aligns with Scripture. With vivid photography, clear illustrations, and accessible explanations, the book is a great teaching tool for high school students, for educators, for any person who is looking to deepen their understanding of biblical geology. Flood by Design offers a refreshing and scientifically sound look at the aftermath of the Genesis flood and how it still echoes in the world all around us today. You can find your copy by visiting the Creation Superstore online, creationsuperstore.com. And now it's time for the Kids Corner. Did you know that your pet dog, whether it's a tiny Chihuahua or a big German Shepherd, is actually part of the same animal family as a wolf? That's right, dogs and wolves are close relatives, and learning more about wolves can teach us a lot about God's amazing design in nature. So I actually have a blue heeler. The blue heeler, our Australian cattle dog, comes from Australia. And when you look at that little dog and you realize that she is actually of the same family as wolves, well, the wolf is just a large dog, is a member of the canine family. The color of a wolf's fur can be gray or brown or black, so it can have a lot of variety. Polar wolves are usually this grayish white, absolutely beautiful, and kind of allows them to blend in with that colder, snowy environment. Now, wolves can grow to be over 5 feet in length and 3 feet high at the shoulder. They're pretty big. Their tails can add almost 2 more feet to their length, and wolves usually weigh in a little less than 100 pounds. Now, that's because they're lean, they're designed to do what they do. The largest have been known to tip the scales at about 175 pounds. Now, wolves are social animals, many times traveling as families as they hunt in packs. Now, they're carnivores. They eat meat. They feed mainly on like hoofed animals, deer and things like that. And they're known to attack domesticated herds, making them a problem for shepherds. Now, the wolf's hair is usually a mixture of colors and covers most of their bodies, including their ears. It provides so much insulation that a lot of times minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit is not a problem for a wolf. Now, that's kind of special. The wolf was designed in such a way that they can actually adjust the temperature of various parts of their body, sending extra heat to their foot pads when they're walking on the snow. Wolves communicate with one another in many ways. So vocal, they can use scent, they can use taste, as well as how they visually hold their bodies to show either authority or submission. They vocalize by ways of barks and howls, and some of those howls can be heard for miles away. Now, you've probably heard that wolves howl at the moon. Is that true? Not really. They actually howl to assemble their packs or sometimes to send out an alarm when they're in danger. But it is a fascinating thing and so eerie to hear a pack of wolves just howling across the plains. Now, wolves are actually mentioned in the Bible in several different verses, usually as an illustration of the danger to or the destruction of innocent things. So just as wolves are a threat to sheep, false teachers or people who are giving us lies can be just as destructive to those who are not aware of what they are teaching and why it is false. Now, when we return, we are going to explore a bold new theory in physics that's gaining attention for what it doesn't assume, namely the Big Bang. Nuclear engineer Dr. Mike Houts joins us to explain how a cutting-edge gravity model might point to something more intentional, even biblical. Stay tuned. Do you pray for your family to know Christ? Do you pray for your country?
In the 900s, some very amazing things were happening in Russia. She was a very cruel, action-oriented woman. Her name was Olga. She took a visit to Constantinople. To make a long story short, she became a Christian, a real Christian. She came back completely different person.
On on Wonders Without Number. We know that you want to have a deep faith in the Lord and to witness to those around you. To do that, you need tools and information to strengthen your faith using scientific discoveries that prove the Bible to be true. The problem is that atheists using evolutionary theories claim that they've refuted the Bible's accuracy. What's worse, the real facts are censored. If you don't have a PhD in science, you're often left feeling helpless when trying to defend your faith. But you need to be equipped to know the truth. For that reason, over the past 13 years, we've become the most trusted name in biblical scientific research, interfacing with nearly every top Christian organization in existence to distill and give you the true facts as they support your faith in Christ. Sign up for our weekly emails and free bi-monthly magazine. Consider becoming a partner with us as we reach the world with the truth of the Bible and the gospel message. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Is there such a thing as a sure proof that God is real, that creation is true, and that we can believe the Bible?
We have a fixed amount of energy and matter in this universe. But if the universe had a beginning, naturally, everything had to have come from nothing.
Wow.
Which is the most immense violation of the first law that you could imagine.
On Wonders Without Number. Welcome back to The Report. From the tiniest particles to the vastness of galaxies, our universe runs on these things called laws. Laws that are so precise that even the smallest imbalance would make life here on Earth impossible. For years, scientists have searched for a single theory that could tie it all together: gravity, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics. Now, new research from a team in Finland has taken an important step toward that goal. Today, we're joined by a guest who understands both the science and the bigger story behind it, because when you study the universe carefully, you don't just find these equations, you actually see these design patterns. Now, Dr. Mike Houts has a PhD in nuclear engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology from MIT, worked 11 years at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and will complete 24 years at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center prior to retiring later this year. Awards for his work on advanced nuclear systems include a NASA Distinguished Service Medal and a NASA Exceptional Engineering Achievement Medal. Dr. Houts, it is great to have you back.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And it was also good to have you on location not too long ago here at the Wonders Center for the opening of our new space exploration exhibit. So,
that was a fantastic exhibit too. Appreciated that opportunity also.
Yes, sir. I know everyone loved hearing from you. Can you give us a quick overview of what this, obviously I've got a phys.org paper that's fairly simplistic, but give us an overview of what this new quantum theory of gravity is all about.
Okay, so what they're trying to do is as you said in the intro, develop a unified theory that basically would unify all of the four fundamentals. You have the strong force, the weak force, electromagnetic forces, and then gravity, and trying to unify that into a single theory. It's something that's been being pursued for decades, and it's very challenging. And so what they've come up with is a way to try to fold in gravity. Basically, it is a quantum theory of gravity. So they're trying to see, if mathematically, if theoretically it will work. If they're able to, then that should really help us move forward in our understanding of cosmology, because that's been, again, it's been decades. No one's been able to come up with this unified theory. I did like the article, like the authors. I read the full article also. They are, again, it looks like a very sound approach, but they're also very, very just open about what the theory does and doesn't do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for probably the last 10 years or more, every science conference I go to, somebody brings it up. It's like, shouldn't there be a way to unite all of these forces, the strong and weak nuclear force and gravity and electromagnetism, and it's got to be more elegant than this. Something's got to tie it together. So it is exciting. Now the researchers, they're using what they call a gauge theory approach. How does that differ from previous attempts to explain gravity?
Well, it's been hard to develop a gauge theory where you can incorporate gravity into basically the other gauge theories. I mean, of course, electromagnetism, that's the just things interacting through the electromagnetic fields. That's probably the most understood, but we've never been able to do that with gravity. But if we can get them all into one consistent theory, at least that's their goal, then you would have this unified theory. And again, it's just hopefully it'll get us one step closer to understanding God's creation, how God created the universe. And that was, one of the things in the article, they did mention singularities of black holes, and that's something we need to understand. They did mention the Big Bang. I think a lot of times that's just kind of gratuitous. They have to somehow, mention the Big Bang. Usually that should raise a red flag, or can raise a red flag, because what they're could be saying is, okay, we're going to be constrained to theories that somehow support the Big Bang, whereas the actual theory would probably either be neutral or it won't support the Big Bang. It just depends on what it's looking at. I mean, remember, I don't know, it's probably 15 years ago. We had the team of mathematicians and the team of physicists, and they were published by the National Academy of Sciences, published in Physical Review Letters. And they had a theory that was going to get rid of the need for dark energy, which was huge. Because, again, you think about it, right now dark energy is 74% of the universe. They had a way to get rid of that. And there's two separate teams, and but they said it couldn't be right because it would require the Earth to be at a specific location. And for whatever reason, there's kind of this religious principle that everything has to be random. In other words, atheist principle saying everything has to be random. So we just totally discarded all that research. To my knowledge, nothing's really been pursued for the last 15 years or so on that. So I don't think the work, the way they described it, is going to be affected by that. But that is, again, one thing that we just need to keep in mind. Make sure when we're really trying to figure out the universe, how it functions, how it was created, we really have to be allowed to consider all options. And obviously, as Christians, we know the biblically consistent ones are going to be true. But at the very least, you got to be able to consider all the options.
Absolutely. And of course, that's only good science. I would love to see how it might help answer questions about black holes. You mentioned that they talk about the Big Bang as a potential, right? Well, I mean, we're obviously open to hearing as long as they are open to exploring wherever this new tack leads instead of just towards some of these assumptions that I would tend to disagree with. Now, you also mentioned...
Right, because it's almost like once it's, oh, wow, that's starting to confirm the Bible, then we have to just drop this and go on to something else. And you can't do that if we want science to advance. And, of course, the Bible tells us, Romans 1:20, I mean, we can learn about God's eternal power and divine nature just through studying his creation. So as Christians, it's really important to study God's creation, learn more about it. And so again, that's why this particular research it's exciting if they could come up with this particular theory. And then of course they readily acknowledge it doesn't explain things like why there's basically was more, there's no antimatter. I mean, there's not in your, the balance between the matter and the antimatter in the universe isn't the way they would predict. They acknowledge there's a lot of things that their theory doesn't do, but it's again, I think it's a good approach. It's also you're hopeful that that objectivity, they're willing to look at things even if they disagree, or talk about things even if they disagree with someone's presuppositions. It's hopefully that's starting to take hold across various fields of science.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Now, when we talk about gravity, I think, well, you've got Sir Isaac Newton and Newtonian gravity. You've got Einstein's theories on the space-time continuum and all of this that also helps us understand some of these aspects in deep space. But as a scientist who has worked on these different probes and rockets and all of that, do you, within the confines of our solar system, do we need to even go into Einsteinian gravity in order to send these probes and to calculate trajectories? How complicated does it get?
Well, even when we really get into the details, at the top level, you can say, well, we don't necessarily need that. But when we start looking at these, like the Pioneer anomaly, or the certain things where you'd have, people used to postulate there's this planet X because there were just these slightly strange behaviors. Well, that is explained by the Einstein's theory of relativity, and it's not. But until we took that into account, we see these little subtle differences. And so, So within our solar system, it's again, you can do a lot, with standard Newtonian physics, but even then, GPS satellites, even as an example, they need to be more advanced. They need to take into account, basically, factors beyond just the Newtonian physics, just to get a really accurate location of where a person might be, and so they do that. So it's so it is important. We can kind of go through our everyday life just knowing if I drop something, it's going to hit the floor. But when you get into the details, it's all important. And again, just understanding the universe. I think that's that's obviously going to glorify God, but it's also something that could benefit us both physically and spiritually.
And absolutely, which is exciting. But then you have this bias that has been, it starts off with these assumptions, with these principles that seem at face value to hold credence, things like the Copernican principle.
Right.
But then those are twisted to say that we're not in any specifically recognizable or special place within the universe. Has that hindered progress in these kind of scientific fields as opposed to going straight with the biblical idea that, well, actually, this is a very finely tuned universe created with purpose?
Yeah, I think it's seriously hindered our research in a lot of different areas, just because, again, you're just making an arbitrary assumption. And the Copernican principle is not even, it's just, you can't be in a special location. Well, all the data has shown, all the data is very consistent with us being in a specific location. And that's where, when it got to the point where you could get rid of dark energy, again, 74% of the universe that we're essentially just making up, you could get rid of that by putting us in a special location, and it was rejected because it violated the Copernican principle. That's kind of a glaring example of how it, again, how it holds us back. Now, I will say there's again, there seems to be a shift, and I think this is important. I think a lot of us remember the sample return. The OSIRIS-REx mission brought a sample back from the near-Earth asteroid Bennu, and there was a lot of misleading headlines on that. But if you got just a little bit into the details, you found out, yes, we found 14 of the 20 amino acids that are in proteins, but they were perfectly racemic. In other words, it was 50-50 mix of left-handed and right-handed amino acids. And so that's completely unsuited for life. And so,
wow.
And so you even had some of the researchers saying that, this, I think one of them said it felt like he'd wasted the last 20 years of his career. But then he said, but hey, that's, because he'd been assuming, we're going to find these, left-handed amino acids, somehow building blocks for life. But the key went on to say, well, but that's why we do these kind of missions, because we find things we don't know about. We find, understand new things, have new understanding. And so I thought that was fantastic. That's because you think about the shock he would have had when he was just sure, or appeared from the quote that he was really confident that they were going to find this, real strong evidence for amino acids that could have helped start life. And instead, all we found was a racemic mixture explainable by just, basic chemistry, that they would exist. So nothing to do with life. So that was encouraging. And then I think, so that's scientifically, and then culturally, I think a lot of people, maybe, at least you've heard of the Joe Rogan Experience, or you're maybe listened to it. I listened to some of his podcasts. A lot of he's really very objective, very secular, covers both sides of the issue. But he had a quote. I'm going to read that just because I want to make sure I get this correct. But he said his quote was, he said, "I'm between atheism's great miracle of the Big Bang and Christianity's big miracle of the resurrection, I'm sticking with Jesus." Okay, now he said that last month, and for those of you that have looked for him, it's well, first of all, for him personally, that's exciting. That means he's coming to the truth personally, but also it's just exciting that he's calling it out. He's like, God gives us the ability to choose. We all choose where we put our faith, and He can choose between the great miracle of the Big Bang, which I think's a way to explain it. I think there's. Anyway, we won't go down that path. No. I don't have a lot of time, so he's making that choice. Again, that's a very secular. He's got something like 11 million listeners, but just encouraging people to know, just you get to choose where you're going to put your faith, and but it's okay to be objective. And so likewise, I think if we're doing science, that's hopefully going to give us more freedom to be objective. No one's going to. It's going to be hard for someone to say, well, yes, that's what the evidence looks like, but you're not allowed to consider that because that might point to God. I think it's going to get harder and harder for people to say that. They still will. They'll do it very subtly or behind the scenes, but it's going to get harder and harder for someone to say, well, no, that can't be right because, boy, that's way too consistent with the Bible.
But at the same time, Dr. Houts, you're exactly right. People who once felt overwhelmed by all of these scientific headlines that seem to contradict their faith, now, through the Genesis Science Report, through common understanding, through some of the things that are being revealed, they're saying, wait a second, all of this new scientific principles, cutting edge research is actually pointing us closer to understanding that our Christian values were right, that we had it right all along by just sticking to God's Word. Thank you, Dr. Houts, for being here. This is incredible.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks again for having me, and you have a blessed day.
Absolutely. This is a great reminder that the more we learn about the universe, the more we see that science is not pulling us away from God. It should be pointing us straight to Him. Now it's time to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back with more on the Genesis Science Report. The work of His hands. Let's look at photography of the Earth from space with a NASA astronaut.
We orbit the Earth 16 times a day. My cumulative time in space is 534 days, so I'll let you do the math.
Wow.
But what the message we hear, there's absolutely no conflict between science and Scripture.
Absolutely. On Wonders Without Number.
Join us at the Wonder Center and Science Museum for this month's Unwrapped event, where we feature expert speakers presenting scientific and biblical discoveries.
It pays to learn history, folks.
We cannot create an aircraft even close to what these birds can do.
This changes the way we do biology.
Discounted tickets are available for an after-hours adventure, including museum admission with kids' hands-on activities, a planetarium movie, Tesla experience, and pre-show entertainment. Perfect for the whole family.
What you believe about the history of the world is going to affect the way that you study the world today.
You see a mathematical order here. You see the orthogonal lines. You see the repeating patterns.
You don't understand what it takes to make a cell. That's serious engineering.
Come be inspired as you learn. The evening presentation is free, but seating is extremely limited, so RSVP immediately at wondercenter.org.
Today on Wonders Without Number, I want to tell you there are some areas of history that we will go through where we will show you that the reason you are on Earth at this moment is absolutely no coincidence.
So if William the Conqueror had not fathered Henry Beauclerk after surviving the Battle of Hastings, there would have been no George Washington, and America as we know it would not have happened.
On Wonders Without Number. We are back, and it's time to hear from you, our viewers. Our first viewer voices submission tonight comes from Dwayne Bagas on YouTube. He says, "Shalom, Mr. David from Northeast Oklahoma. This is absolutely wonderful. Your presentation is excellent. I'm hoping to work on a way to develop a ministry recommendations platform, and of course, you will be included." Thank you, Dwayne, for that. I appreciate it. We are seeing the impact that this program is having on so many lives, whether it's over 1 million who have viewed these things on YouTube alone, or those watching on Genesis Science Network, or any of the other platforms. It is having an impact, and it's bringing clarity to some of these issues. Now, our second testimonial comes from Michelle Beasley, who had this to say after visiting the Wonder Center. "Very cool museum, perfect for the kids. They loved exploring and seeing all of the dinos. We'll definitely be back for a planetarium show." Thanks, Michelle, and I would love to have you back for a planetarium program. And one of our shows, is my favorite, is actually produced by ICR, and it's called Exploring Deep Space, where in that 60-foot full dome planetarium, we put you down in reclining seats, you're flying through space, past galaxies, through nebulae, and then you're learning about the immensity of space, but you're also learning about the importance and how it points back to a designer. Now, if you've been impacted by the work that this ministry is doing, we would love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media platforms. You can go to the Genesis Science Network or the David Rives Ministries social media platforms, or you can just email comments at genesissciencenetwork.com. Now it's time to shift our focus from the science of creation to the purpose behind it. So on this week's Genesis Science Minute, we're going to ask the question, why would the Creator step into His own creation? Let's take a look right now. The Genesis account of creation focuses almost entirely on the formation and development of Earth, the only known inhabited place in the entire universe. The prophet Isaiah states, "Thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited." That makes us pretty special, but there's something far more significant. John 1 says, "The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us." Jesus Christ, the Creator himself, left his throne and came here to live as man, die for our sins, and offer redemption to the world. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
For more information, visit David Rives Ministries at davidrives.com. David, RIVES.com.
Our Creator and our Redeemer. It's an incredible thought. Now it's time to jump into this week's ministry report. And I've got some exciting news to share with you because later this month I'm going to be leading a group on an African photo creation safari, an incredible 11-day adventure through the South African bush. It is always a joy to teach astronomy under the southern sky, to explore God's design and the wildlife and the ecosystems, and to spend time fellowshipping with families who share a love for creation. Now, I'm really looking forward to bringing back plenty of stories and photos and new content to share in future episodes. Just recently, I had the opportunity to speak at a local STEM science event for public elementary students. We explored the wonders of space, and the students even got to hold a real meteorite. You should have seen their faces. And those kind of hands-on experiences are really important. I'm grateful for every chance we get to inspire the next generation with science that points back to a creator. And your support makes these encounters possible as it allows us to travel and to share with people all around the world. And recently, I had the opportunity to appear on Channel 2 News, where I shared a bit about our brand new NASA exhibit here at the Wonder Center. So if you missed it, here's a short clip from that interview.
Well, if you've been down Highway 46 in Dixon, you've likely seen a big sphere, but the outside is just the beginning of what lies inside the Wonders Center and Science Museum.
Yes, we welcome the founder, David, back to the show. We're so happy you're here.
It is great to be back.
Yes, especially because they have this new NASA space exhibit. We were just geeking out before we started this segment, so fill us all in.
Well, goodness, we just opened this up. I guess 2 weeks ago, we had almost 500 people there for the ribbon cutting of a new exhibit called Wonders of Space Exploration at the Wonders Center. And it is an entire collection of mostly NASA memorabilia, things that went to space, things that have seen the moon, things that have had so much history, right? And then also to try to inspire the young people who are seeing these to say, well, wait a second. Somebody accomplished this. Could I also accomplish this one day if I'm driven hard enough, if I study hard enough? And so it was a great moment, and we were excited to announce that.
It was great to see local media showing interest in our mission, helping more families engage with science from a biblical worldview. And it's the prayers and generosity of our viewers that continues to make all of this possible, because your monthly support helps ensure that we can continue to share the wonders of God's creation with individuals all over the globe. So I invite you to partner with us in ministry right now by making a contribution today. You can visit our website or call 931-212-7990 to donate and learn more about this work. Next, we journey to a breathtaking spiral of stars and the story behind its stunning light. On this week's Heavens Declare, we visit one of my favorite galaxies, the Whirlpool Galaxy. Let's take a look right now. Situated in the constellation Canis Venatici, we find the breathtaking Whirlpool Galaxy, also known as M51. This stunning object in the night sky appears as one large spiral galaxy interacting with another much smaller one. Now, the primary galaxy was discovered by Charles Messier in 1774, but its smaller companion galaxy wasn't discovered until 1781 by Pierre Méchain. Now, in 1845, M51 became the first celestial object to be recognized as a spiral shape. Previously, telescopes with enough optical precision to resolve this were not yet available. The Whirlpool is the brightest of the Messier 51 group of galaxies, which also includes the Sunflower Galaxy, NGC 5023 and 5229. Now, a supernova is a rare event to witness, even given the incredible number of stars that are visible in the universe. This powerful force of a star exploding causes a bright display visible from great distances. Now, on May 31st, 2011, a new supernova was spotted in M51. Using our ministry's large 16-inch observing telescope, I was able to take photographs soon after the event. I had a very limited time to find a perfectly clear night, set up the scope and gear, and try to capture the supernova before it became so dim that it was barely visible from Earth. Now, this is over 380 billion years away, even if we were traveling at the speed of our fastest spacecraft. You know, the scriptures tell us of a time when the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. It's amazing to think that the magnitude of these displays are only a glimpse of God's infinite power. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. You know, when I took a photo of a star going supernova in that galaxy and then realized how far away that galaxy was and realized just how incredible of an event that is, it's actually fairly rare to be able to photograph a supernova. It was just this groundbreaking moment for me personally that led me to realize, wow, we can really use this research to further understand God's creation and then, of course, to give Him the glory for it. Now, up next, is gold really leaking from Earth's core? Well, that's the headline, but what's the science behind it? Well, Dr. Tim Clarey joins us after the break to dig into the data, the geology, and what mainstream models might be missing. Hi, I'm David Rives, and I'm inviting you to visit the Creation Superstore, the largest Origins-related store in the world. Not only will you find every book and video title on creation versus evolution, science, but also every resource that teaches us about our origin and how it all takes us back to Genesis, a grand designer, the God of the Bible, and ultimately, yes, the gospel message. Documentaries your family can trust, fossils, teaching videos, children's books, church Bible studies, homeschool supplements, and expert scientific literature. If you can't find a title, call us up and we'll add it. Normally, you'd have to visit dozens of sites to gain access to all of the titles that are out there, and then you would be at a loss to whether the book or video was worth the purchase. But not here. We've curated the best of the best into top 10 lists. And on some of my favorite products, you'll find the Rives rating, where I help guide you on the best resources available for not only those who love history, biblical studies, and creation science, but also great products at the layman level, easy to understand for those who are learning or want their children and grandchildren to be exposed to a biblical worldview. Just look for the Rives rating to find my personal favorites. Use the search bar to look up a topic or follow our menu to sort by ministry, subject, or author. Give us a call at 931-212-7990 as you're browsing. We have ministry volunteers who will do their best to assist you at all hours of the day and even help you place your order. Yes, a real person. Get ready for a secure shopping experience brought to you by the leaders of creation-based research. Your purchase goes towards ministry outreach and also supports the authors and organizations who publish the material, most of whom are personal friends and colleagues of mine. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Welcome back to the report. A recent headline is making waves, claiming that the Earth's core contains massive reserves of gold and other precious metals, and that it's leaking up toward the surface. Now, it sounds like a story that's pulled straight from a treasure hunter's dream. But is it real science or just another example of speculation dressed up as data? Joining us to break it all down is a geologist and researcher with the Institute for Creation Research, ICR. Dr. Tim Clarey earned a PhD from Western Michigan University and a master's from the University of Wyoming, both in geology. He has past experience with a major oil company and has taught at the college level for over 30 years. He's been employed by ICR since 2013 and has written or co-authored 7 books, including Dinosaurs, Marvels of God's Design, which is a kid's favorite, Carved in Stone, Geological Evidence of the Worldwide Flood, one of my personal favorites, and a new college textbook called Earth Systems. Tim, it's great to have you back on the program.
Well, it's always great to be here, David.
I tell you what, we appreciate your input, and I just love what you do. So the big headline here, I'll get right to it, Earth's core, it's leaking gold. Well, let's start with the obvious. Does this claim hold water geologically?
Well, you read through the research paper, there's actually no gold mentioned in the entire article. So the news story is completely kind of a fabrication of what they found. And they found some elements that are called siderophile elements in some samples in Hawaii in different places. But to my knowledge, they didn't find any actual gold. So to say gold's leaking from the core is a little bit of a stretch.
Well, you know, and I would say that it was definitely, the article that I've got in front of me is certainly at a layman's level, up to the point of saying, like a dragon, Earth is hoarding most of its gold. Okay, that's poetic, of course. But the article mentions that researchers found trace metals in Hawaiian volcanoes. And from that, they're saying, well, maybe these materials are rising up from the core, so there are heavier elements and metals down deeper in the core. What's your take on how they got from A to Z here in these claims?
Well, they really found a difference. They sampled some rocks in Hawaii, and they found these siderophile elements, like mostly ruthenium and tungsten, which are in the same group as with gold and other like iridium, other elements that are kind of commonly mixed in with liquid iron. And so these particular elements, they assume that the core has a lot of iron in it. They've always said that. Nobody really knows what the core is made out of, for one thing. The other problem is at Hawaii, there's been a lot of dispute over, is the magma coming, how deep from the mantle is it coming? Is it coming all the way from the core? Is it coming partway up, halfway up the mantle? You're looking at about 1,800 miles between the surface and the core. And these seismic studies don't really show necessarily it's coming all the way from the core. So there's really a lot of assumptions just to get to where we are. Just to claim that there's gold coming from the core. And I suppose it's entirely possible. Nobody really knows where gold comes from. It just shows up in a lot of igneous rocks, particularly in quartz. It seems to be one of the last things that kind of crystallizes when the magmas are crystallizing. And so you actually get some quartz veins that contain a lot of gold in them. But that's the so-called mother lode type of thing. But what they really did is they studied magmas in Hawaii and compared them to what they perceived to be these really old magmas in Greenland, and they saw the difference, and they said, well, obviously the magmas at the surface today are coming from the mantle, the more modern magmas coming up, and they're different than what we're seeing here at Hawaii. And so the Hawaiian isotope ratios of ruthenium are basically from an older, the Earth formed earlier in their idea of the early formation of the Earth 4 billion years ago or so, compared to what we see now. So the mantle is different today, they say, than the core. And so that's why this stuff, it's so very complicated. Very complicated, David.
It is.
Nonetheless, they did find differences, but again, you could explain away in a multitude of ways.
In a few moments' time, we're trying to break something down that you've studied for years and years and years. I know it's impossible, but if you noticed throughout this article, it leans heavily on these models that are rooted in deep time, our evolutionary assumptions. I mean, they're talking about a meteor bombardment that might have delivered gold into the crust. And why are those foundational beliefs worth questioning?
Well, they are, because that's the naturalistic explanation for the Earth is, of course, that it formed out of nothing. The Big Bang happened sometime in the past, 13 or so billion years ago or more, and then the Earth ultimately formed about 4.5 billion years ago. And there was supposed to be a bombardment that changed the composition, and all the heavy elements sank to the core. And that's the whole idea that gold might be in the core along with these other elements. And then now it's leaking back to the surface through these deep magma. But really all they're finding is they found a difference between some rocks in Hawaii and rocks in Greenland. These perceived older rocks in Greenland that they say are multiple billions of years old. But again, those are all based on assumptions. This whole article is really based on a lot of assumptions.
Absolutely. But then we can also say maybe we could go with another starting point. What if there was a real biblical flood? Does that possibly explain the chemistry that we see at these volcanoes even better? And walk us through how that works.
Well, that's a good point. John Baumgartner has proposed this runaway subduction as possibly the mechanism of the flood, and I agree. And so you would have had real rapid subduction where these cold slabs of different chemistry near the surface could have been subducted down into the mantle all the way down to the top of the core. And it's possible that those cold slabs, which are still there, they can still visualize these, which kind of verifies it. These things move down fast, or they would have heated up by now. These may be leaking some of these elements, these acidophile elements up for all we know, and they could be causing the differences in chemistry. And it could be actually verification of the young Earth model, that the Earth, had this catastrophic event called the global flood, and the Earth's entire seafloor, just like a conveyor belt, was consumed during the flood year, and you made a whole new seafloor. And you may be seeing some remnants of that coming up, and that might explain the differences we're seeing much better than the evolutionary story.
Absolutely. And I think that's encouraging for Christians who are watching, that we should be asking the right questions, relating that to what biblical history told us, and then say, how does this fit within this scenario? Dr. Clarey, time goes so fast when we're talking to you. I love what you do. Again, thank you for your research, and I look forward to having you back in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. We want to appreciate what he is doing. It's a great reminder that when you dig these headlines out, you're often looking at a house of cards that are built on layers of speculation, and sometimes simply for the very purpose of eliciting a response, a click, a view. We have to be careful about those types of things, and we are here on the Genesis Science Report.